If you stop and think about it, why did we even invent writing in the first place? Your first thought is probably poetry, right? Or maybe epic stories, laws, even love letters. But the real reason? It's way more boring. We're talking about paperwork. Yeah, I know, but stick with me, because once you understand why, it'll totally change how you look at, well, everything. Okay, so let's start with this puzzle. How can millions of people, total strangers, cooperate to play a single game of soccer? I mean, think about it. You've got 22 players on the field, a referee, millions watching at home, and everyone just knows the rules. Our DNA doesn't come with an offside rule gene. So, how is this even possible? And this is where we're different from, say, a beehive. Bees cooperate, sure, but it's all hardwired. It's in their DNA. For us humans, it's completely different. Our secret weapon is shared stories. We cooperate because we all agree to believe in the same made-up stuff. Things like the rules of soccer, or the idea of a country, or the fact that this piece of paper is worth something. None of that is real in a biological sense. It's all in our heads, in our shared imagination. All right, so for these stories to scale up and build something huge like a whole kingdom, we ran into a massive problem. And it was a problem with our own biology. So for thousands and thousands of years, human societies just kind of got stuck. They couldn't grow beyond a certain size. And it wasn't because there wasn't enough food or land. Nope. The real problem was data. Just too much information. Think about it. If you're going to run a big empire, you have to keep track of taxes, who owns what land, how much grain is in storage, for hundreds of thousands of people. And that's way too much for our built-in hard drive, the human brain. Yeah, our brains have some serious flaws when it comes to being a database. 3 big ones, actually. First, our storage capacity is pretty limited. You just can't remember everything. Second, it's not exactly a reliable backup. When you die, poof, all your data is gone. And maybe the biggest one? Our brains evolved for a totally different kind of data. They're great at remembering things like, don't eat those red berries, or Grog is mad at Ugg. They were not designed to process the ancient equivalent of a giant Excel spreadsheet. And that was the big bottleneck holding humanity back. If we were ever going to build empires, we had to solve this. We desperately needed an external hard drive, some way to store and process all this information outside of our own heads. So where did the solution come from? Not from some great poet or philosopher. Nope. It came from an ancient bookkeeper, basically. A bureaucrat in a place called Sumer. This timeline really puts it into perspective. See that long flat line after agriculture starts? For thousands of years, society just plods along. Then, right around 3500 BC, something happens in Sumer. And whoa, look at that spike. All of a sudden, you get massive cities, big kingdoms, everything changes. So what was it? What was that invention? This right here, this little clay tablet, is one of the oldest examples of writing we've ever found. And what does it say? Is it some deep philosophy, an epic poem? Nope. It's a receipt. It basically says 29,086 measures of barley, received over 37 months, signed Cushion. I mean, how amazing is that? The first recorded name in all of human history doesn't belong to a king or a warrior or a prophet. It belongs to an accountant. A guy named Cushion, just doing his job, signing off on a grain shipment. This is it. This is the proof. Writing was invented for boring old paperwork. Now, this early writing was what's called a partial script. It's not like the writing we use today. You couldn't write a poem with it because it was only designed to do one thing: record numbers and nouns. It's a lot like math, right? You can use mathematical symbols to describe the universe, but you can't use them to write a novel. For that, you need a full script, like English, which can capture pretty much anything we can say. And what's really wild is that the Sumerians weren't the only ones who figured this out. Half a world away, in the Andes Mountains, the Inca Empire was managing millions of people with a totally different kind of partial script. It's called a quipu. Instead of clay tablets, they use these incredible, complex systems of knotted, colored strings to keep track of everything. Tax records, census data, you name it. It's the exact same data problem, just with a completely different and brilliant solution. Okay, so problem solved, right? We've got our external hard drive, we've got thousands of these clay tablets and knotted strings, but this just creates a whole new problem. How do you find anything? No, seriously, just try to imagine it. You need to find one specific record, say a land sale from 30 years ago, and it's on one little tablet in a giant room that is literally piled floor to ceiling with thousands of other tablets that all look pretty much the same. Good luck with that. Your brain can pull up a memory in a split second. A giant pile of clay tablets? Not so much. So what was the solution? Well, it was a whole new set of inventions that are probably sitting in your office right now. Catalogs, filing systems, libraries, the whole shebang. And even more important, you had to train people, specialists like scribes and librarians, whose entire job was to organize and retrieve all this data. And right there, that's it. That's the birth of bureaucracy. And this is where the story takes a really deep turn. Because this new way of organizing information, it didn't just change how we organized clay tablets. It started to change how we think. See, our brains don't naturally think like a filing cabinet. We think associatively. You think about one thing and it sparks a memory of something else, which connects to a feeling, which reminds you of a song. It's like a big, messy web. But bureaucracy, it can't handle that. It needs everything to be neatly compartmentalized. Tax records go in this box, property deeds go in that one, no mixing allowed. And you could argue that this is the single most important effect of inventing writing. It's not just that we could record our history. It's that over time, it literally rewired our brains. We learned to stop thinking in webs and started thinking in boxes. We learned to think like a filing cabinet. So for centuries, this new bureaucratic way of thinking chugged along, building bigger and more complex societies. But then, another partial script came onto the scene. And this one was going to pour rocket fuel on the whole process. And what was this revolutionary script? Just 10 little symbols, 0 through 9. These numerals were invented in India. They were spread and perfected by Arab scholars, and they eventually took over the entire world. They became the one truly universal language. Not English, not Chinese, but math. Think about it. Today, if you want to get anything done, if you want to be taken seriously in politics or science or business, you have to speak in numbers. We've become obsessed with translating everything into data. We don't just talk about people being poor. We have to define a precise poverty line. We can't just talk about being happy. We have to measure it with well-being scores. Which brings us to today, and the final stage in this long story, the most radical evolution of data processing yet. Because out of mathematics came an even more powerful, even more abstract, partial script, binary code. It's a logical conclusion of this whole journey. A language with only 2 symbols, 0 and 1. Everything, and I mean everything in our digital world, this very recording you're listening to, is built on that simple foundation. It's a language we can't really speak, but it's the native tongue of the machines that run our world. And so that leaves us with one last kind of unsettling thought to chew on. Writing started out as a simple tool, a servant, created just to help us remember things. But now, in a world dominated by algorithms and data, where we are constantly training ourselves to think in ways that computers can understand, you have to ask, who's the servant now? And who's the master?